Hi, my name is Bridget Dugan. I'm with the Peninsula Regional Animal Shelter. I am the Marketing Adoption Coordinator, and I have with me here today Lenny Liebert, who is our Volunteer and Animal Behaviorist Coordinator at the shelter. When somebody comes in to owner surrender their animal, what would be the steps that they would need to take to give us the best picture of what their animal is like in a home environment?
That's a good one. Obviously, the more information they can give us about that animal, the better it helps us to make a proper adoption decision to aim them towards a home that they need. So they can fill out that owner surrender questionnaire. They could tell us about any training they've had. If they've got vet records, that's fantastic, and then we know the history and health history of the animal. If they're seeing any medical problems right now that maybe they haven't had a vet look at, so that our veterinarian can then evaluate the animal, because if they're in pain or they're sick, that can impact behavior. One of the other things I'd like to invite people to do is, if they're surrendering their animal because they're having behavior problems, see if I can talk with them, because a lot of times there's intervention that they could do that might allow them to keep that animal at home. Or if it's medical bills or things like that, there's options out there for lowering some of the cost of that, because boy, some of that can get expensive. But the more they can tell us about that animal, the more information they can provide, the better adoption we can make for that animal later on.
And that's also another level of volunteering that we've had in the shelter, is maybe an animal that needs some additional medical attention and is not available for adoption just yet, maybe a long-term medical condition. We've had some medically trained volunteers that have been able to take those animals home on a foster basis until they're ready for adoption.
Absolutely. Our fosters have taken home neonates and small kittens and puppies, things that have a really hard time being in a shelter environment. Sometimes we have to do surgeries to help an animal, and they need to recover from that. And that's much easier to do in a home environment with, like you said, a trained foster that can attend to their needs. And of course, we're always available, and emergency veterinary care is always available to our fosters when they have them at home. But yeah, if there are some medical needs that we can treat that take some recovery, that's a great way for volunteers to help.
And if you want to become a foster, the shelter does provide everything that you need for that. Medical supplies, crates, the food, we provide all of that.
We do. We provide every bit of it. You have to come in and you have to be trained. It's more of a commitment. I mean, we're spending more time training you and giving you these skills. So we do ask for a commitment to help us out. But yes, the food that they need, the medicine they need, if they need enclosures, we can provide all of that. The foster doesn't have to do that.
Thank you, Lenny, for all that wonderful information on our volunteer and animal behavior program. And next we have Michael Bowman, who is one of our shelter volunteers. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you have done some weekend warrior programs with us. Can you explain a little bit about that process and how it's impacted you?
Impacted my wife and I greatly. As a matter of fact, we did our first weekend warrior about 3 months ago. Well, probably a little bit longer than that, about 6 months ago. And the weekend warrior went great. We got over attached to the dog, but when we brought him back to the shelter, my wife and I, we supplied a report on how he did in the home. And I think that helped him get adopted, because about 4 or 5 days later, I was back at the shelter volunteering and walking, and he got adopted that day. And the shelter was nice to actually let me hand the dog over to the new owners, which was like a special moment for me. And our second weekend warrior, we brought our dog in, brought her into the home. She was super scared of anything and everything. And the weekend warrior turned into a foster. Then the foster turned into us adopting her. So we have her now.
And what's awesome is her name is Cece, the dog that you took home. She is a great example of what Lenny and I were talking about earlier, that a dog comes into the facility very scared, very shut down, not knowing the surroundings. And by getting her out in a foster program like at your house, we were able to see the dog's personality change and grow and see how she acted in a home. And fortunately for her and for you, you guys were able to make that match. And what would you say to somebody who might be interested in a foster program, whether it's short term, like a weekend warrior, or maybe longer term?
I would do it in a heartbeat. It's, you'll get attached to an animal, which is the natural process of it, but it gets that animal out of the shelter for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and you can actually spend some one-on-one time with that animal. Animal's not in a stressful environment. It's actually in a home environment where it's a little more calm. You can take the dog out for walks and see how it does, see how it behaves in your home. I would definitely recommend doing it.
Lenny, do you have any input on the Weekend Warrior program or the foster program in terms of volunteering and how that helps us in the shelter?
Right, and I think Cece is a great example because we weren't going to be able to put Cece on the adoption floor. Not because she's a bad dog, but she was so shut down. Everything frightened her. So putting her on the adoption floor would have been very hard for her. So one of the things we could look at is fostering, long-term foster, which is what we, I think, originally planned, was to see how she was in a home so we could make decisions. And then if she did blossom, which she did, maybe adopting her from foster rather than bringing her back into the shelter environment. But in the process of blossoming in their home, the adoption happened there. She never had to come in for a meet and greet.
If you have any additional questions or would like some more information on our programs at the shelter, you can come down and find us at 5843 Jefferson Avenue, Newport News, Virginia, 23605. Our phone number is 757-933-8900, and our website is www.peninsulaanimalshelter.com.